They asked me later why I did it, why I stood against an empire for 200 children I'd never met. The answer was simpler than they wanted to believe. Someone had to, and I was there. The convoy stretched across the void like scattered pearls on black silk. 12 refugee transports, their hulls scarred from a dozen border skirmishes, limping toward the Selenian territories. The HSS Wraith hung in position 300 kilometers out, a medical frigate barely larger than the smallest refugee ship. My ship. My responsibility. I was running diagnostics on the harmonic deflector when the proximity alarm screamed. 12 signatures. Massive. Closing fast. Commander Thorne, Lieutenant Hayes' voice cracked over the comm. We've got Valorian warships inbound, Dreadnought class, all 12. Through the viewport, they emerged from the darkness like predators materializing from deep water. Each one dwarfed the Wraith by a factor of 20. Their hulls gleamed obsidian black bioluminescent markings pulsing along their flanks in patterns I'd learned meant aggression. Hunting colors. Hail them, I said, keeping my voice level. Training took over when your heart tried to climb out of your chest. 23 years in combat medicine had taught me that much. The response came in Valorian, translated through our ship's mediocre AI. The voice was male-clipped, carrying the weight of absolute authority. Human vessel, you are escorting unauthorized refugees through Valorian territorial claims. Stand down and prepare to be boarded. This is your only warning. I looked at the tactical display. 217 souls on those transports. 193 of them children. Selenian refugees fleeing a war they hadn't started, heading for colonies that might offer safety. Might. This is Commander Caden Thorne of the Human Medical Corps. These are civilian vessels under medical protection protocols. They pose no threat to Valorian interests. The pause lasted 3 heartbeats. Medical protection is not recognized in contested space, Commander. Stand down or be destroyed. My hands moved across the console. The harmonic deflector hummed to life, a piece of experimental tech we'd retrofitted 6 months ago, designed to convert harmful radiation into protective barriers for treating patients in radioactive zones. Never tested in combat, never designed for combat. Caden. Hayes appeared at my shoulder, young face pale. We can't fight 12 dreadnoughts. We can't even fight one. I know. Then what? Get everyone into the med bay, seal the bulkheads. And Hayes, I met his eyes. Whatever happens in the next 5 minutes, don't open that door until it's over. He hesitated, then ran. I opened a channel to the convoy. All transports emergency scatter protocol. Random vectors. Go now. They scattered like startled fish. Beautiful. Chaotic. Impossible to target all at once. The lead dreadnought opened fire anyway. Not at the convoy, at us. The shot came as a column of superheated plasma bright enough to burn after images into my retinas. It should have vaporized the Wraith, should have turned us into an expanding cloud of ionized particles. The harmonic deflector caught it instead. I felt the ship shudder as the system cycled, converting the incoming energy, reshaping it, reflecting it. Not back at the source. That would have been too simple. The deflector worked on resonance frequencies, creating a cascade pattern that fed back through whatever fired at it. The plasma bolt split into 12 streams. Each one curved back toward the dreadnought fleet in a geometry I couldn't have calculated if I tried. The universe has rules about energy and momentum. The deflector just reminded them. 12 dreadnoughts, 12 reflected streams, each one finding the reactor signature that had spawned it. The first ship went critical before I could breathe. The explosion was silent in the vacuum, a sphere of white light expanding with terrible beauty. Then the second, third. The cascade reaction spread through their formation like dominoes, falling each detonation, triggering containment failures in the ships nearby. 9,000 Valorians, gone in 17 seconds. I didn't fire a single shot, just showed them what they'd aimed at themselves. The deflector overloaded, sparks erupted from the console, and I smelled burning plastic and ozone. Pain lanced up my arms where the secondary discharge caught my hands. The lights flickered, died, came back on emergency power. The view screen showed wreckage, burning metal tumbling through space. The convoy was gone, scattered to safety. We'd bought them that much. I triggered the ship-wide comm with hands that didn't want to stop shaking. Medical teams to the bridge. We've got wounded incoming. But there was no incoming. Just us. Just the Wraith floating in a debris field that used to be 12 ships. That used to be 9,000 people. Someone was screaming. High-pitched breaking, coming from the medbay. I ran, The Selenian child was 7 years old by their calendar, maybe 5 by human reckoning. Female, I thought, though their species' gender markers were subtle. She'd been having a seizure when the battle started. Stress-induced, common in children who'd seen what she'd seen. Now she was coding. I dropped beside her, hands moving on autopilot. Chest compressions, airway clear, ventilations. Hayes had the crash kit open, was pulling out the defibrillator with hands steadier than mine. Clear, I said. Her small body arched. The monitor blipped, flatlined, blipped again. Nothing, another round. Compressions until my shoulders burned. Breathe, compress, breathe, count. The rhythm of trying to hold death at bay. Her eyes opened. Brown, huge, terrified, but open. I sagged back against the bulkhead, feeling my own heart trying to jackhammer through my ribs. Alive. She was alive. 217 refugees were alive because of 17 seconds of violence I still couldn't quite process. The child reached up with one trembling hand, touched my face, said something in Selenian I didn't understand. Hayes translated, voice soft. She says thank you. I nodded, couldn't speak. My throat had closed up with something that wasn't quite grief and wasn't quite triumph. 7 days later, I stood in chains before Sovereign Vera. The throne room was designed to make visitors feel small. It succeeded spectacularly. The ceiling vanished into shadow 30 meters overhead. The floor was polished obsidian that reflected the amber light from sconces burning along walls carved with the history of Valorian conquest. Every surface seemed to whisper, "You are nothing here." 4 guards had escorted me from the medical station orbiting Selenian Prime. They hadn't been gentle, but they hadn't been cruel either. Professional, efficient, the kind of soldiers who followed orders without question and slept fine afterward. The chains were ceremonial, I thought. Had to be. They were made of some dark metal that caught the light in strange ways, but they weren't tight enough to restrict blood flow. Just tight enough to make a point. Rows of Valorian nobles lined both sides of the approach to the throne. Tall, all of them tall, averaging 7 feet with skin ranging from deep indigo to midnight blue. The bioluminescent markings along their necks and forearms pulsed in colors I was only beginning to understand. Crimson for anger, amber for neutral formality, pale white for shame or fear. I walked the length of that room and tried not to look like I was counting steps to keep from thinking. 37, 38, 39. Sovereign Vera sat on the obsidian throne like she'd been carved from the same stone. 7 feet tall, even-seated skin, the deepest shade of indigo I'd seen among her people. Her markings were violet pale and controlled, pulsing in rhythm with her breathing. Her crest rose elegant and sharp, adorned with chains of dark metal that might have been ceremonial or might have been weapons. She wore armor, not robes, functional plates over vital areas, leaving her forearms free to move. She was striking. That was the word that came to mind. Not beautiful by human standards. Too alien for that. But striking the way a lightning storm is striking. Magnificent and dangerous and impossible to ignore. I stopped at the circle of lighter stone, set into the floor 20 feet from the throne. The designated position for those who had business with the sovereign, or those who were about to be judged. Her eyes were violet, luminous, fixed on me with an intensity that felt like physical pressure. Commander Caden Thorne. Her voice was lower than I'd expected, with a resonance that seemed to vibrate in my chest. Captain of the HSS Wraith, Human Medical Corps, age 37, born on the colony of New Meridian, enlisted at 19, decorated twice for medical valor, widowed 7 years ago. The last part hit like a punch I hadn't braced for. Your wife's name was Elena Thorne, born Elena Karras, field surgeon, died at Corvan Station during the medical facility collapse. You were 3 systems away on a supply run. You arrived 11 hours after the station fell. My hands clenched into fists inside the chains. How did she know that? How did she know any of that? Corvan Station was raided by Valorian forces. Commander Thorne, did you know that? I couldn't speak. My throat had locked up. The raid was unauthorized. A border commander named Shaketh decided the station's supplies were worth taking. He disobeyed my direct order for a ceasefire in that sector. She leaned forward slightly. I had him executed, along with his 2 lieutenants and every soldier who participated. 63 Valorians died for the crime of killing the people your wife died trying to save. The throne room had gone absolutely silent. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. But it was too late, wasn't it? Too late for Elena. Too late for the 147 humans who died in that facility. My justice gave you nothing back. She stood, descended the 3 steps from the throne, walked toward me with slow, deliberate strides that made the ceremonial armor whisper, stopped 6 feet away, close enough that I could see the violet of her markings wasn't uniform. It shifted and pulsed like something alive. I researched you, Commander Thorne, extensively. I needed to understand the human who destroyed 12 of my warships, who killed 9,000 Valorian warriors, for children he had never met, of a species he had no alliance with. They killed themselves, I said. My voice came out rougher than I intended. I didn't fire a single shot, just gave them back what they tried to give me. A semantic distinction. An important one. Your fleet chose to fire on a convoy of refugees. My ship's defensive system reflected that choice back at them. I'm sorry for the lives lost, but I'm not sorry for what I did. Something flickered in her markings. A wash of pale blue that appeared and vanished so quickly I almost missed it. You are not sorry. She repeated the words, slowly tasting them. 9,000 Valorian warriors are dead and 217 refugees live. And you know which number you can sleep with. Yes. A noble on the left side of the room surged forward, a broad-shouldered male with crimson markings blazing. You dare speak to the sovereign with such... Lord Draconis! Vera didn't raise her voice. Didn't need to. The words cut through the chamber like a blade. Sit down. He froze. Then retreated, markings flickering between crimson and pale white. Ashamed of being ashamed. Vera turned back to me. Your species is young, Commander. You have no empire, no great fleet, no ancient history. You are scattered across a handful of colonies with no unified government, no military doctrine, no territorial claims that any other species respects. She tilted her head. And yet you, one man on one medical frigate, stood against my armada. Why, I met her eyes. They were close enough now that I could see the pupils weren't quite round. Slightly elliptical, catching the light like cut gemstones. Because someone had to. Others could have fled. Others weren't there. I was. She studied me for a long moment. The nobles shifted uncomfortably. Somewhere in the back of the chamber, someone coughed and tried to make it sound like they hadn't. You humans, Vera said quietly so that only I could hear, are either the most foolish species in the galaxy or the most dangerous. Maybe we're just the ones who show up. That blue flicker again. Stronger this time. Visible for almost a full second before she controlled it. I didn't know what it meant, but the tall woman standing beside the throne, the one with amber markings and the bearing of a professional bodyguard, saw it. Her eyes widened fractionally. You will remain in the capital, Vera announced, turning back to her throne, as my guest, until I determine what is to be done with you. Am I a prisoner? You are whatever I decide you are, Commander Thorne. She sat. The audience was over. They gave me quarters in the eastern wing of the palace. Real quarters this time, not a cell. A room with a window that faced the palace gardens, all dark crystalline plants that chimed softly when the wind blew. A bed size for Valorians big enough that I could have fit 3 of me across it. A table, chairs, a door that locked. From the outside. The servant who brought my evening meal was young by Valorian standards, maybe 60 or 70 years old. Her markings were deliberately dimmed, a sign of low caste. She set the tray on the table without meeting my eyes. Thank you, I said in Valorian. Probably butchered the pronunciation, but I tried. She froze, looked up. Her markings flickered with something I couldn't read. You speak our language. 3 words so far, working on a 4th. The corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile. That was 6 words, human. Then I'm doing better than I thought. She left, but the next morning she brought a data pad with language lessons loaded on it. Said nothing. Just set it beside the breakfast tray and disappeared before I could thank her. I spent the day learning Valorian pronouns and trying not to think about why I was learning them. The woman from the throne room appeared on the second evening, walked into my quarters without knocking, which seemed to be standard Valorian courtesy. Tall even for her species, with deep indigo skin and amber markings that pulsed steady and controlled. Her crest was high and sharp. She wore layered armor that looked functional rather than ceremonial. I am Zephyr, she said, studying me with unconcealed suspicion. First shield of Sovereign Vera. First shield, that's bodyguard, protector, advisor, companion. All of them. Her upper arms crossed. A defensive posture I'd learned. I have served the Sovereign since her ascension. I know every threat to her person, every scheme in this court, every poisoned word spoken in shadow. And you think I'm a threat. I know you are. The question is what kind? I leaned back against the window frame. Outside, the twin suns were setting, turning the sky from amber to burning orange. I destroyed 12 warships. 9,000 Valorians died. There are nobles in this court who would see me flayed alive and my bones displayed in their halls. I know what I am. A political liability wrapped in a moral question. Zephyr's markings brightened, surprise maybe, or grudging respect. The sovereign has been watching you. I noticed. No, not in the way you think. She moved closer, close enough that I could see the faint scars along her neck. Combat marks, old ones. She watches everyone. It is her nature. Observe before deciding. But you confuse her, and nothing has confused Sovereign Vera in the 60 years. I'm just a medic who got in over his head. You are a human who saved 200 lives and destroyed an armada in the same breath. You are a man whose wife was killed by Valorian raiders, yet you speak our language and thank our servants. You are either very brave or very foolish. Probably both. She studied me a moment longer. Her markings shifted to something softer, a muted amber that seemed almost warm. The sovereign was affected by what you said in the throne room, about the children, about being there because someone had to. She turned toward the door. No one speaks to her that way. No one dares. Maybe someone should. Zephyr stopped, looked back over her shoulder. That is a dangerous opinion, Commander Thorne. Most of the true ones are. She left without another word, but she didn't lock the door behind her. The alarm came on the 8th day. I was in the gardens when the sound hit. Not a sound, really. A vibration that seemed to come from the ground itself, deep and bone-rattling. The crystal plants shattered. The earth trembled, and from the eastern wing of the palace, smoke began to rise. Guards sprinted past me, weapons drawn. Servants fled towards the inner palace, markings flashing white with fear. In the distance, I could see flames. Every instinct I had said run towards safety. Find cover, protect yourself first. I ran toward the smoke instead. The eastern wing was chaos. A precision strike had collapsed 3 floors directly above what I'd learned was the council chamber. Rubble was still falling. Dust choked the air thick enough to taste. And from beneath the wreckage I could hear screaming. The guards were focused outward, scanning for secondary attacks, looking for the threat, not the victims. Standard military doctrine. Secure the perimeter first, rescue second. I didn't have time for doctrine. I pulled off my jacket, wrapped it around my hands, and started digging. The first survivor was a young Valorian male, barely past adolescence. His lower right arm was pinned beneath a stone beam. His markings flickered erratically between amber and white. Shock, extreme pain, maybe both. I couldn't lift the beam alone, but I could use the rubble itself. Braced a broken support strut against a larger piece of debris, created a fulcrum and pushed until something in my back screamed protest. The beam shifted. 2 inches. 4. 6. Enough. I dragged him free, carried him to the courtyard, went back in. 2 more. 5. 8. Each one harder than the last. My jacket shredded. The makeshift bandages on my hands soaked through with blood. Some of it theirs, most of it mine. My shoulders burned, my vision grayed at the edges from exertion. I went back in anyway. The 10th person I found was Sovereign Vera. She was conscious, trapped beneath a massive section of ceiling that had to weigh a metric ton. Her armor had saved her life, but the weight was crushing her, slowly grinding her into the stone floor. Her markings were dim, dangerously dim, her breathing shallow and rapid. Commander Thorne, her voice was steady despite everything. You should not be here. And yet here I am. I knelt beside her, assessing the debris. Can you feel your legs? I am the sovereign of the Valorian Empire. I do not discuss my injuries with, can you feel your legs? She stared at me. Then very quietly, no. I found a metal rod from the collapsed framework, wedged it beneath the ceiling section. The physics were against me, a ton of stone, and I was one injured human with hands that were barely functional and a back that felt like someone had taken a sledgehammer to my spine. You cannot lift that, Vera said. Probably not. Then why are you trying? Because you're under it. I pushed. The rod bent. I adjusted, found a better angle, and pushed again. Something in my shoulder tore. White-hot pain shot down my arm. My vision tunneled. I pushed anyway. Human. Her voice had changed, softer. Caden. It was the first time she'd used my name. Leave me. Find Zephyr. Bring soldiers with proper equipment. Zephyr's not here. The soldiers are on the perimeter, and this section is still settling. In 15 minutes, the secondary supports will give way, and this entire area will come down. I reset my grip, feeling blood run hot down my palms where the rod cut through the makeshift bandages. You don't have 15 minutes. Then I die. It is not your concern. Everything is my concern. That's my whole problem. I pushed. This time something shifted. An inch, maybe two, but enough. When I get this up, I said through gritted teeth, you need to pull yourself forward. Use your upper arms. Can you do that? I am Valorian. My upper body strength alone could. Great, on three. I didn't count to three, just pushed. Every broken part of me went into that single impossible act. Every torn muscle and shredded nerve, every ounce of will I had left. The slab rose. 3 inches. 4. 5. Vera moved. All 4 arms dug into the ground and she dragged herself forward with a sound that was half battle cry and half sob. The moment she was clear, I released the rod. The slab crashed down with a sound like thunder. I collapsed beside her lungs, heaving, tasting copper. For a moment, we just lay there in the dust and debris, breathing, alive. Vera turned her head to look at me. My eyes were closed. My face was gray with pain and dust. Blood seeping through my clothes in too many places to count. You are injured, she said. I'm fine. You are lying. I'm alive. Close enough. Her markings did something I'd never seen. They shifted to a deep, warm blue that spread slowly from her chest outward, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. I didn't see it. My eyes were still closed. But Zephyr, arriving with a full emergency team 30 seconds later, saw everything, took one look at the Sovereign's markings, and stopped dead in her tracks. Your radiance, she breathed. Get him to the medical wing, Vera ordered. Her voice was steady, but the blue glow was intensifying. Now, best physicians, all of them. My Sovereign, you are also. Him first. Zephyr obeyed, lifted me carefully like I was made of glass. As she carried me toward the medical wing, she looked back once. Vera was sitting up now, her legs still unresponsive. Her armor cracked, dust covering every inch of her, but her markings were still blue. Still pulsing, still betraying what her voice would not. Trust, complete and unconditional. The color that couldn't be faked. The color that was never given lightly. The color that said, I am yours and you are mine, and I cannot undo this even if I wish to. When consciousness returned, she was the first thing I saw. The medical wing was quiet, too quiet for a facility that had just handled mass casualties from a bombing. The only sound was the soft hum of Valorian medical equipment and my own breathing, which hurt more than it should have. You're awake, Vera said. Not a question, a statement. She sat beside my bed in the same simple robes she'd worn in my quarters weeks ago. No armor, no crown, no attendants, just her watching me with an expression I couldn't read. How long? My voice came out, rough, scraped raw. 2 days. Your injuries were extensive. Burns, lacerations, severe muscle damage to your back and shoulders. The physicians said you should not have been able to lift that beam. And yet I did. And yet you did. She leaned forward slightly. The movement made her wince. Her legs, I remembered. My medical team restored partial nerve function. I will walk again. Because of you. I tried to sit up. Pain lanced through my shoulder and I fell back with a grunt that was definitely not dignified. Do not move. Her hand, one of her upper hands, pressed gently against my chest. The touch was warm. Careful. You tore 3 major muscle groups. The healing accelerators need another day to... You're walking. I am sovereign. I do not have the luxury of bed rest. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Silence. Then impossibly a sound I hadn't expected. Laughter. Quiet and brief, but genuine. My physician said the same thing, less directly. She withdrew her hand. You saved 9 Valorians from the rubble before you reached me. Did you know that I stopped counting? Why? The question was soft, vulnerable in a way I hadn't heard from her before. Why risk your life for people who wanted you executed? I looked at the ceiling, white stone carved with patterns that probably meant something in Valorian culture. Because they were hurt, and I could help. That's all it ever is. For you, perhaps, not for most. Then most people aren't paying attention. She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried something I couldn't quite identify. Among my people, there is no word for what you did. Risking your life for someone who summoned you as a prisoner. Someone who could have ordered your execution with a gesture. We have words for duty, for obligation, for strategic sacrifice. But what you did was none of those things. It was simple. You were hurt. I could help. Nothing about you is simple, Caden Thorne. The way she said my name made something tighten in my chest that had nothing to do with my injuries. Her markings were dim in the low light, controlled. But as I watched a faint blue glow began to pulse along her neck, she noticed my gaze and her upper arms crossed defensively. Zephyr tells me this color is visible to you. I've seen it. Do you know what it means? No. She closed her eyes, opened them. The blue was spreading despite her obvious efforts to suppress it. Among my people, this display is reserved for. It is not given lightly. It cannot be forced or performed. It is the body's declaration of absolute trust. My physiology has decided this without my permission. And you can't disagree with it. No. The word came out barely above a whisper. I find that I cannot. I reached out slowly with my less injured hand, placed it over one of hers. Her markings flared so bright the room turned blue. I don't have markings, I said. But if I did, they'd be saying the same thing. Day 9. They made it official. I was now Shadow Guard to the Sovereign. The title came with ceremonial armor that didn't fit a weapon I wasn't trained to use, and the suspicious glares of every noble in the palace. You look ridiculous, Zephyr said not unkindly. We were in the training hall, a vast chamber with floors of polished stone and walls lined with weapons I couldn't name. Vera stood at the center, wearing light combat armor, waiting. The armor is Valorian standard, I said, trying to adjust the shoulder plates that kept digging into my still healing muscles. I'm human standard. There's a compatibility issue. Then we will train you out of your armor. Vera's voice echoed across the hall. If you are to protect me, you need to move as we move. Fight as we fight. I'm a medic, not a... I know what you are. Now I will teach you what you can become. The training was brutal. Valorians had forearms, natural advantages in leverage and striking angles that made human combat styles look primitive. But Vera was patient. She showed me how to use my smaller size, my lower center of gravity, how to move inside their reach where their extra limbs became a disadvantage instead of a strength. Humans are unpredictable, she said after throwing me for the 7th time. We rely on patterns, tradition. You do not. Use that. I swept her legs on the 8th attempt. She went down, and for half a second, I thought I'd actually won. Then her lower arms caught my ankles, and suddenly I was the one on my back staring up at the ceiling with the wind knocked out of me. Better, she said. You are learning. The nobles watched from the gallery. Lord Draconis, the crimson-marked warrior, who challenged me in the throne room. Lady Sethra, whose father had commanded the fleet I destroyed. Elder Vorin, ancient and calculating. And others whose names I was still learning. They whispered. I could feel their judgment like physical weight. Pet human. Novelty. Weakness. Let them whisper. I'd survive worse than their opinions. On the 10th day, Vera took me to the gardens. The twin suns were setting, turning the sky into layers of amber and orange that bled into deep purple. The crystal plants chimed in the evening breeze, a sound like wind through glass bells. This is where I come when the throne becomes too heavy, she said. We walked slowly, her gait still careful on legs that were healing, but not yet whole. Where I remember that I am more than the crown. How long have you been sovereign? 67 of your years. I inherited the throne when my mother was poisoned. My 2 elder sisters fled before they could be questioned. I was never supposed to rule. But you do. But I do. She stopped beside a formation of dark crystal that caught the fading light and scattered it in geometric patterns. Do you know what it means to be unbonded among my people? Zephyr mentioned it, said it makes you vulnerable. Politically. Incomplete, that is the word they use, as if I am a broken thing waiting to be made whole. Her markings pulsed with something that looked like old anger carefully controlled. For 67 years they have waited for me to choose a consort, to bond, to prove I am fit to lead. Are you? She looked at me sharply. Then her expression softened. Yes. But they will never believe it as long as I stand alone. I thought about Elena, about the empty space she'd left behind that nothing could fill, about the way some losses carved out pieces of you that never grew back. Lone isn't always weak, I said. No. Vera reached out, hesitated, then let one hand rest on the crystal formation between us. But sometimes it is simply alone. We stood there as the sun set and the sky darkened to black, not touching, not speaking, just existing in the same space, sharing the same silence. Her markings glowed blue the entire time. The poison came on day 11, council session. I stood behind Vera's throne trying to look like I belonged there. The nobles argued about resource allocation, border disputes, trade agreements. The kind of bureaucratic theater that made combat seem straightforward by comparison. A servant approached with refreshments, young female markings dimmed in the way of the low caste. She set the tray on the small table beside the throne, poured liquid from a crystal decanter into an equally crystal cup. I caught the smell when she lifted the cup toward Vera. Bitter almonds, faint but unmistakable. A scent I'd learned in field medicine treating patients who'd been exposed to certain toxins. My body moved before my brain finished processing. I knocked the cup away. It shattered against the obsidian floor. The liquid spread in a pool that steamed. The servant's markings flashed white. Pure terror. Then the liquid touched my hand. Fire. Liquid fire eating through skin, through muscle, racing up my arm toward my heart. I tried to stay standing, tried to speak. My legs stopped working, and suddenly I was on the floor, seizures racking my body, drowning in pain. Voices shouting. Hands on me. Vera's voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Medical team, now! Then darkness. When I opened my eyes, she was there. Again. You stayed, I managed. My throat felt like I'd swallowed broken glass. Vera sat in the same chair she'd occupied 2 days ago, still wearing the same robes. Her markings were pale blue, pulsing with an intensity she wasn't even trying to hide anymore. You took poison meant for me. Her voice broke on the last word. You moved without thinking, without calculating. You just moved. Reflex. It was not reflex, it was choice. She leaned forward, and I saw her hands were shaking. The servant confessed. She was blackmailed. They have her daughter, threatened to kill her if she did not poison me. Is the daughter safe? Zephyr is retrieving her now. The servant will not be punished. She reached out, stopped herself, then completed the gesture. Her hand covered mine. You could have died. But I didn't. You could have. The blue in her markings intensified. I do not understand you, Caden Thorne. You are small and fragile and temporary. Your species lives barely a century. You have no markings, no crest, no way to display what you feel. And yet you feel more deeply than anyone in this court. That's not true. It is, and it terrifies me. She stood abruptly, walked to the window, stood there with her back to me, silhouetted against the amber light. Among my people, we display emotion through markings. We cannot hide what we feel, but we have learned to control it, to dim the colors, to show only what we wish to show. She turned back to me. Except trust. Trust cannot be dimmed or hidden or performed. It simply is. Her entire body was glowing blue now, brilliant and absolute. I have never shown this color to anyone, Caden. Not my mother, not my advisors, not the nobles who served me. Only you, and I cannot stop it. I pushed myself up, ignoring the protest from my healing body, swung my legs over the side of the bed, stood swaying slightly. Then don't, I said. We stood there 3 feet apart while the blue light filled the room. Day 12. Garden walks became routine. Vera would finish council sessions and find me in the training hall or the library or my quarters. Never an order, just a quiet request. And we would walk. Tell me about Elena, she said. So I did. About how we met in medical school, how she was brilliant and driven and absolutely terrible at remembering to eat. How we'd married young because waiting felt like wasting time we didn't have. She was right about that, I said. The time. We had 7 years. Then Corvan Station happened, and we had nothing. I am sorry. I know, and I know you executed the people responsible, and I don't know if that makes it better or worse or just different. Vera was quiet for a long time. Then, when I learned what Shaketh had done, I was furious. Not because he'd defied my orders, though that was reason enough, but because he had killed people who were healing others. Medical personnel, civilians, the kind of people who should never be targets. But they always are. Yes, they always are. She stopped walking, turned to face me. I killed him slowly. Made sure he understood why. Made sure everyone understood that the Valorian Empire does not make war on healers. Did it help the revenge? No, but it was necessary. I understood that. The difference between justice and closure, how you could have one without the other. Zephyr found us on day 14. She'd been avoiding me since the throne room markings incident. Now she approached directly, her own markings carefully neutral. Commander Thorne, may I speak with you? Of course. Vera excused herself gracefully, left us alone in the garden under the twin suns. I was a slave, Zephyr said without preamble. 80 years ago, House Draconis owned me. I was property, less than property. I existed to serve and had no rights to refuse. I waited. She needed to tell this her way. Young Princess Vera was 20 years old. She attended a gathering at House Draconis and saw me. I was being punished for dropping a serving tray. They were burning my markings, making them dim permanently. It is the worst thing you can do to one of us, to steal our light. Her upper arms wrapped around herself, a gesture of remembered pain. Vera stopped them, in front of everyone. She invoked an ancient law and purchased my freedom at a cost that bankrupted her personal wealth. House Draconis never forgave her. She made an enemy that day, but she saved me. She saved you, I repeated, understanding. She risked everything for someone who was nothing, who had no value, who could offer her nothing in return. Zephyr met my eyes. You did the same. In the rubble, you risked your life for Valorians who wanted you dead, for a sovereign you barely knew. I knew enough. She saved me, Zephyr said quietly. Now you save her. We are the same, you and I. We owe her everything, and we would die before we let harm come to her. She left before I could respond. Day 15, emergency council session. I stood behind the throne again, now wearing armor that actually fit. Zephyr had found me human-sized pieces and had them modified overnight. The nobles filed in, but there was a new presence, a female Valorian I hadn't seen before. Taller than Vera, if that was possible, with skin so dark it was almost black. Her markings were deep crimson, pulsing with barely controlled aggression. Her crest was adorned with battle honors. Sister, Vera said, her voice absolutely neutral. Sovereign, the newcomer replied, making the title sound like an insult. Caliph, the elder sister who'd fled after the mother's death. Returned now, apparently. You look well, Caliph said, circling the throne like a predator. Considering recent incidents, bombings, poison attempts, one might think someone wants you dead. One might think many things. Evidence is harder to come by. Indeed. Caliph's eyes found me. And this is the human, the one who destroyed our fleet and now plays at being your guard. Commander Thorne serves at my request. How convenient. An unbonded sovereign and her pet human. The Empire has never looked stronger. Lord Draconis rose from his seat, crimson markings blazing. The elder princess speaks truth. Sovereign Vera has ruled 67 years without taking a consort, without bonding. This makes her vulnerable, makes the Empire vulnerable. I have navigated 3 wars, Vera said, her voice cold. I have expanded our territories. I have held the noble houses together despite their constant schemes. If you question my competence, Lord Draconis, do so directly. I question your completion. An unbonded ruler is half a ruler. Then I propose a solution, Caliph said smoothly. Abdicate in my favor. I am bonded. I am complete. I will restore proper order. The throne room held its breath. Or, Caliph continued, take a Valorian consort within the month. Prove you can rule as a whole sovereign should. I felt it building. The trap. The political chess match where every move led to checkmate. Vera's markings were completely neutral, revealing nothing. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the careful control. She was going to refuse, going to dig in, going to fight a battle she couldn't win politically. I stepped forward. Then I'll bond with her. The silence was absolute. Every eye in the chamber turned to me. Vera's markings flared with shock. Caliph's face twisted with something between rage and disbelief. You, what? Vera's voice was barely audible. I walked around the throne, stood in front of her, met those violet eyes that had watched me wake twice now. You need political legitimacy. Humans need protection from future raids. I can be your consort and broker a formal treaty between our peoples. You get stability. We get safety. Everyone wins. You cannot bond with a human, Lord Draconis sputtered. It is unprecedented. It is legal, Elder Vorin said quietly. The ancient noble rose slowly. The bonding laws make no specification about species, only about willingness and capability. You would bind your mind to an alien. Caliph's voice dripped venom. Forever for politics. I looked at Vera. Her markings were blazing blue now, uncontrolled, brilliant. Not for politics, I said. For her, politics is just a bonus. Vera stood, descended the 3 steps, stopped inches from me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from her markings. You understand what bonding means. Her voice shook. It is telepathic, permanent. You would feel what I feel, know what I know, be bound to me until one of us dies. I understand. You would give up your autonomy, your privacy, your separation. For me, yes. She searched my face, looking for doubt, for hesitation, for the lie. Found nothing but truth. Then I accept, she said. Her voice rang across the chamber. Commander Caden Thorne will be my consort. The bonding ceremony will occur in 7 days. Any who object may challenge by Valorian combat law. Kayla's markings went white with rage. She spun and stormed from the chamber without another word. Half the nobles followed her. Lord Dracona stayed, his eyes promised violence. But Vera's markings were blazing blue, and she was smiling. 7 days to prepare for forever. The palace shifted around us like a living thing after the announcement. Nobles who'd ignored me now watched with calculating eyes. Servants whispered in corners. Zephyr moved through the halls like a ghost, always armed, always vigilant. They will come for you, she said on day 16. We were in the armory selecting ceremonial weapons I'd need to carry during the bonding ritual. Kalith does not accept defeat. She will find a way. Let her try. You do not understand. She has been preparing for this moment for 67 years. Building alliances, gathering debts. The moment Vera's mother died, Kalith fled because she knew suspicion would fall on her. But she has never stopped planning her return. I selected a blade that felt balanced in my hand, human-sized, light enough for speed, heavy enough for stopping power. Then we'll be ready. Vera found me that evening in my quarters. She wore simple robes again, no crown, no armor, just her backlit by the setting suns through the window. I need to show you something, she said, about the bonding, what it truly means. She guided me to sit on the sleeping platform. Sat across from me close enough that our knees almost touched. Reached out with both upper hands and placed them gently against my temples. Close your eyes, breathe, let your mind quiet. I did, and felt something brush against my consciousness. Not intrusive, gentle, like water finding its level. A presence that was distinctly her. Warmth, strength, and underneath it all, a loneliness so profound it made my chest ache. This is what bonding feels like, she whispered. This connection, but permanent, always present. You will know my moods, my fears, my desires, and I will know yours. There will be no secrets between us, no privacy, no separation. I opened my eyes. Hers were inches from mine, luminous in the fading light. Are you trying to scare me away? I'm trying to be fair, to give you the choice that bonding will take from you. I reached up, covered her hands with mine. I choose this. I choose you. Her markings flooded blue. The connection deepened, and for a heartbeat, I felt what she felt. Wonder, fear, hope, love so fierce it burned. Then she pulled away, breaking the contact, leaving me gasping. 7 days, she said. Then nothing breaks this bond except death. On day 17, in the quiet hours before dawn, while the palace slept and Zephyr stood guard outside my door, I made contact. The encrypted comm channel took 3 hours to set up. Zephyr helped, asking no questions, trusting I knew what I was doing. When the connection finally stabilized, the face that appeared on the screen was weathered and suspicious. Commander Sarah Chen, leader of the New Meridian Resistance Cell. No relation to Elena, just one of those coincidences. We'd served together years ago, before Elena's death, before I'd retreated into medical work and tried to forget about fighting. Thorne, heard you were dead, then heard you destroyed a Valorian fleet, then heard nothing for 2 weeks. I've been busy. Listen, we don't have much time. I need you to trust me. Trust you to do what? I'm bonding with Sovereign Vera, becoming her consort. It's real Chen, not a trick, not a scheme, but it's also an opportunity. To do what exactly? To broker a real treaty, human Valorian, formal recognition, protection from raids, trade agreements, everything we've needed and never had the leverage to demand. She was quiet for a long moment. You're serious. Dead serious. Vera executed the raiders who hit Corvan Station. She wants peace, but she needs human cooperation to prove it to her nobles. And what do you get out of this? I thought about violet eyes and blue markings, about choosing someone despite the cost. Everything that matters. The council will never agree without proof. We've been burned before. Then I'll give you proof. After the bonding, I'll have access to Valorian military networks, defense positions, fleet movements, everything you need to verify we're negotiating in good faith. Thorne, I know what it is, but it's necessary. Trust has to start somewhere. She studied me through the screen. You've changed. Yeah, I have. Fine, preliminary agreement. But Thorn, if this is a trap, I'll kill you myself. Get in line. I closed the connection. Didn't see Lord Draconis' spy device recording every word from the ventilation shaft above. Day 19 dawned with alarms. Guards stormed my quarters before the twin suns cleared the horizon, dragged me from sleep, and shoved me to my knees on the cold stone M floor. My hands, healed now by Valorian medical technology, but still stiff, caught my fall against the stone. Zephyr appeared in the doorway, markings flashing white with shock. What is the meaning of this? Treason, Lord Draconis said, stepping into the room like he owned it. Commander Thorn has been communicating with human military forces, offering them Valorian military intelligence. We have proof. He held up a data crystal. My voice played from it, distorted but recognizable. After the bonding, I'll have access to Valorian military networks, defense positions, fleet movements. The words hung in the air like poison. Context, I said. You cut the context. The context is clear. You manipulated the sovereign's trust, used her feelings against her. Draconis' smile was predatory. And now you will face trial. They chained me, different chains than before. These ones were tight, bit into my wrists until I could feel my pulse hammering against the metal. The trial chamber was smaller than the throne room, more intimate, which made it worse. Every noble could see my face clearly, could watch me squirm. Vera sat on a smaller throne, elevated but not distant. Her markings were completely neutral. Amber, controlled. She hadn't looked at me once. Draconis presented his evidence. The recording, additional surveillance showing me accessing encrypted channels. A testimony from a servant who claimed I'd ask questions about military protocols. The human, Draconis concluded, has infiltrated our highest levels, has seduced our sovereign, has betrayed every trust given to him. I call for immediate execution. The evidence is concerning, Elder Vorn said carefully. But context matters. Commander Thorn, what say you? I stood. The chains rattled. I was negotiating a treaty. Humans need proof of Valorian good faith. I offered transparency in exchange for peace. That's not espionage, that's diplomacy. You offered our military secrets to your people, Draconis snarled. How is that not treason? Because I wasn't offering them behind Vera's back. I was going to present the full treaty proposal after the bonding with her knowledge and consent. Convenient, Kalith said from her seat near the front. You claim you would have told the sovereign, after you were bonded, after it was too late for her to refuse without breaking the sacred bond. That's not silence. Vera's voice cut through the chamber. First words she'd spoken, first time she'd looked at me. Her markings were still neutral, but her eyes were cold. Commander Thorn, did you or did you not offer to provide human forces with access to Valorian military intelligence? Yes, as part of a formal yes or no. Yes. And did you or did you not plan to wait until after our bonding to reveal this? Yes, but yes or no? My throat closed. Yes. She stood, descended from the throne, walked toward me with slow, deliberate steps, stopped 3 feet away. I have been sovereign for 67 years, she said. Her voice was perfectly controlled. In that time, I have faced assassination attempts, coups, betrayals. I have learned to trust no one completely, to verify everything, to assume deception until proven otherwise. She stepped closer. You, Caden Thorn, made me forget those lessons, made me believe that someone could choose me without agenda, without calculation. You made me trust. Her markings flickered, just for a second, a flash of blue that appeared and vanished. The evidence suggests that trust was misplaced, that you are, as Lord Draconis claims, a manipulator, that you used my feelings to gain access to information that could destroy my empire. Vera, it is sovereign, her voice cracked like a whip, and I choose my empire over personal attachment. Guards, exile Commander Thorn from Valorian space immediately. The bonding is canceled. The throne room erupted. Nobles shouting, Kalith smiling, Zephyr stepping forward with markings blazing white. Your radiance, you cannot. I can, I do, remove him. They dragged me away. I looked back once, saw Vera standing alone in the center of the chamber, surrounded by nobles who were already circling like predators. Her markings were completely amber, neutral, betraying nothing, but her hands were shaking. The exile transport was scheduled for dawn on day 20. They locked me in a holding cell in the palace's lower levels. Stone walls, iron door, no windows. I sat on the cold floor and tried not to think about violet eyes. About blue markings. About 7 days that had almost been forever. The explosion came at midnight, not close, distant enough that I felt it as vibration rather than sound. The palace shuddered, lights flickered, and from somewhere above I heard screaming. The iron door burst open. Not guards. Zephyr. Her armor was scorched, her markings flashing between amber and crimson. Kalis forces are storming the palace. Full coup. She has Draconis and half the noble houses. She cut my chains with a plasma blade. We need to go. Where's Vera? Trapped in the council chamber. Kalis forces rigged explosives in the western wing support structure. The entire section came down on the chamber. I ran. The palace was chaos. Smoke. Fire. Caliph soldiers fighting loyal guards in every corridor. Zephyr cleared our path with brutal efficiency, but there were too many. We fought through them anyway. The council chamber was buried under 3 floors of rubble, already collapsing, further secondary supports giving way. Guards stood at the perimeter, useless, waiting for heavy equipment that wasn't coming. I didn't wait, just started climbing the debris. Commander, you cannot. I was already gone, into the smoke and dust, following the sound of my own heartbeat and something deeper. An instinct that said she was here. She was hurt. She needed me. Found her 30 meters in, not trapped, fighting. 3 of Calith's soldiers had her cornered against a collapsed pillar. Her armor was cracked from the initial explosion. Blood ran from a cut on her temple. She was holding them off with 2 ceremonial blades, but her movements were slower than they should have been. Injured, maybe badly. The soldiers hadn't seen me yet. I picked up a piece of rebar from the rubble, moved fast, hit the first soldier from behind, dropping him. The second one turned, and I was already inside his reach, drove my shoulder into his midsection, took him down with leverage instead of strength. The third one was smarter, backed off, raised his weapon at Vera. Drop it or die, he said. Vera's eyes met mine over his shoulder. Her markings were completely neutral, controlled, amber. The trial, I said to her, ignoring the soldier. The betrayal. That was fake, wasn't it? You were trying to protect me. Thorn, what are you? The soldier's confusion bought me half a second. I moved. Disarmed him the way Vera had taught me. Swept his legs, put him down. Vera was staring at me. You figured that out. Her voice shook slightly. Took you long enough. You suppressed your markings. Made yourself cold. Made me believe you'd chosen the throne over me. I did choose. I chose to keep you alive. Calith would have had you killed in the throne room if I'd defended you. I walked toward her, stopped close. Never make that choice for me again. Caden, her markings suddenly flooded with blue. Brilliant, uncontrolled. Everything she'd been suppressing in the trial chamber poured out in a wave of light. It lit up the rubble-strewn corridor like dawn breaking. I lied, she said. Her voice broke. I lied to every noble in that room, took suppression drugs to keep my markings neutral. Because if they'd seen blue, they would have known. Would have known I trust you, absolutely. Would have used it against us. I know. I reached up, touched her face where blood ran from the temple cut. I know. Now let's go kill your sister. Together. Always together. No more choosing for each other. She pulled me close, all 4 arms wrapping around me, her markings blazing so bright I could feel the heat. Agreed. We fought through Calith's forces as a unit. Vera's training and my unpredictability combining into something neither could achieve alone. She covered my vulnerabilities. I exploited openings she created. We moved like we'd been bonded for years instead of days. The throne room doors were barred from inside. We blew them open with plasma charges. Calith sat on the obsidian throne. Dracona stood beside her, and at her feet, kneeling in chains, was Zephyr, a blade pressed against her throat. Sister, Calith said, how kind of you to join us. And you brought your pet human. How quaint. Release Zephyr. This is between us. Is it? I don't think so. I think this is about the future of the Empire. About proper leadership. About... You talk too much, I said. Calith's markings flared crimson. The human speaks. How amusing. Valorian combat law, I continued. I invoke trial by single combat. Me versus you. Winner takes the throne. The throne room went silent. You, Calith laughed. You are an injured human. I am full-blooded Valorian warrior. I have trained for a century. You have trained for 2 weeks. Then it should be easy for you. She studied me, seeing the trap but unable to refuse without looking weak. Very well. When I kill you, the human problem ends, and Vera will be broken. Or, I said, I win, and you face justice. She descended from the throne, drew her blade, circled me like a predator. Vera taught you, she said. Let's see how well. She attacked. 4 arms against my 2. Longer reach, more strength. Every advantage of biology and training. Her strikes came from angles that shouldn't have been possible. But Vera had taught me, not just technique, strategy. Humans are unpredictable. Use that. I didn't fight like a Valorian. Didn't follow their patterns or honor their forms. Fought dirty, fought human. Went for pressure points and weak spots in angles that made her extra limbs a liability. She was stronger, but I was faster, more mobile, and I'd spent 2 weeks learning exactly how to move inside a Valorian's reach. The fight lasted 4 minutes, felt like hours. Blood and sweat and the screaming of overtaxed muscles. She wounded me twice, deep cuts that would need stitches. I gave back worse. In the end, I put her down with a human combat move she'd never seen. Swept her legs, followed her down, disarmed her with leverage physics instead of strength, pressed her own blade to her throat. Yield, I said. She spat blue blood at my face. Never. Then die. I don't care which. Yield, Vera's voice. Sister, you have lost. Yield with honor. Kalis markings flickered between crimson and white, rage and shame. Finally, terribly, they dimmed to neutral. I yield. I stepped back, let her rise. Watched guards take her into custody. Watched Draconis try to run and get tackled by Zephyr, who looked entirely too pleased about it. Elder Vorin rose from where he'd been sheltering behind an overturned table. His markings pulsed steady amber. Well, that was irregular, but effective and legal. Ancient combat law prevails. The nobles who'd survived the coup filed back in, took their seats, looked between Kalith in chains and me covered in blood. The coup is broken, Vorin continued. The traitors identified. Sovereign Vera's rule is reaffirmed. He paused, and Commander Thorn has proven his honor through combat. The bonding may proceed, unless there are further objections. Silence. Then we have consensus, finally. Day 22, the bonding ceremony. They'd given us 2 days to heal, to prepare, to be sure. Vera's legs were still recovering, but she could stand, walk, even dance, though she claimed that was unnecessary showing off. Nervous, she asked. We stood in the preparation chamber, waiting for the ceremony to begin. She wore ceremonial armor polished until it gleamed. I wore human formal attire they'd modified to include Valorian elements, a hybrid, like we were about to become. Terrified, I admitted. Good, me too. The chamber beyond was filled with nobles, with witnesses, with the entire weight of Valorian tradition watching our every move. We walked in together, stood before Elder Vorin at the center of the room. Bonding, he intoned, is the union of minds, the joining of souls. What is bound here cannot be undone, except by death. Do you, Sovereign Vera, accept this bond freely and without coercion? I do. Do you, Commander Caden Thorn, accept this bond freely and without coercion? I do. Then join hands, open your minds, and let the bond form. Vera's hands found mine, 2 of them at least. Couldn't hold all 4 at once. Her markings began to glow. Blue. Brilliant. Absolute. I felt the connection open like a door I'd been pushing against, suddenly giving way. Her consciousness rushed in and mine rushed out, and we met somewhere in the middle. Fear, hope, love, trust, loneliness ending, completion, wholeness. I felt what she felt, knew what she knew, became part of something larger than myself. The bond locked into place with a sensation like the universe clicking into alignment. Permanent, unbreakable, forever. I opened my eyes. She was crying. So was I. Hello, beloved, she whispered directly into my mind. Hello. I answered the same way. Wife. 6 months later, Kalith had been exiled to the outer territories, stripped of rank but not executed. Vera believed in justice, not revenge. Lord Draconis faced trial and chose exile over imprisonment. The noble houses who'd supported the coup paid reparations and pledged loyalty. The treaty signing took place on neutral ground, a space station at the border between human and Valorian space. Commander Chen represented the human colonies. Vera represented the Empire. I stood between them, literally and figuratively, the bridge that made this possible. The terms are acceptable, Chen said, reviewing the final document. Protection from raids, trade agreements, cultural exchange, formal recognition. And transparency, Vera added. As Commander Thorn promised, limited military intelligence sharing to prevent future misunderstandings. They signed, cameras flashed, history pivoted. Afterward, on the observation deck, Chen pulled me aside. You look different. I am different. Happy. I thought about the bond, the constant awareness of Vera's presence in my mind, her emotions tangling with mine. No privacy, no separation. Forever. Yes, I said, completely. The medical station orbiting Selenian Prime held a celebration when we visited. 217 refugees, most of them children, crowded into the main concourse to see us. The 7-year-old girl I'd saved approached slowly. She'd grown, thriving now in ways that had seemed impossible on that day. 17 seconds changed everything. She said something in Selenian. Vera translated through our bond. She asked if you remember her. Every day, I said. The child smiled, handed me a drawing. 2 figures, one large and one small, surrounded by stars. Family, I realized. How she saw us. That night in our quarters aboard the ship heading back to the Valorian capital, Vera found me standing by the viewport, watching stars slide past. What are you thinking, she asked, though she could feel it through the bond. That I stood against an empire for 200 children I never met, and somehow ended up here, with you, happy. She moved beside me, all 4 arms wrapping around me from behind, her markings casting blue light that reflected in the viewport. Do you regret it, the bond? The lack of separation? I felt her beneath the question. Her own doubts. Her worry that she'd taken too much. Changed me too much. Never, I said, and let her feel the truth through the bond. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. What's that, home, Tomeo? We stood there as the ship moved through the void, as the galaxy turned around us, as empires rose and fell and remade themselves. But in that moment, in that small space of glass and starlight, 2 souls had chosen each other, had become something neither could be alone. And that choice, that bond, would outlast every empire, every war, every ending. Above us, the universe spun on, infinite and cold and vast. But we had each other, and that was everything.